What's up, bosses? Welcome to About Her Business, the podcast where we leave all the gossip at the door and get straight down to business. I'm your host, Jonte, and today we have the founder of La Prisma Society, Miss Leisure. Now, Miss Leisure has been an accountability coach for quite a while now, and she helps founders build sustainable systems that help them last a long time. And she's here today to help us maintain legacy on what she means business. So, ladies, grab those cups and those notepads and let's get down to it. The meeting is now in session. Welcome, Miss Lesher.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate being here today.
Thank you so much for being here. And before we get started, I do want you to fully introduce yourself to my audience because you guys, we talked about it and I was completely screwing up her name, but I do really want you guys to get to know her. So, Miss Lesher, could you please introduce yourself?
Yes, ma'am. So my name is Sarai LaShore, and I am the founder of La Prisma Society. I am in Arizona based, Phoenix, Arizona. This is where I grew up in, and I'm a single mom as well. I have three kiddos, 12, 6, and 3. So I am busy. We already know how business is. Business keeps us busy, and then our kids keeps us busy off the clock. So, but I wouldn't trade this life for anything else. It's challenging in the way that I need it to be challenging for my life.
Oh, I love that. And we could talk about motherhood all day, but I spare y'all those conversations today, y'all.
So
So you ready to get into today's conversation?
I'm ready.
Let's go. So take us back to the beginning. What first originally pulled you into entrepreneurship? And what did those early days teach you about building a business that you couldn't have learned from anybody else?
In my past experience overall, I've had a lot of sales experience. I worked for corporate America. I did financial analysis. I did financial investigations. I even did a little bit of private investigating. Would always run into this internal block. And it was my opinion only mattered up to what my title was. Right. And so even in sales, there's this push of continuous, the next thing, which is automatically important to me that there was always, I can always keep going up. Right. But when you're only in sales, you're only limited to that role. Right. And I was definitely a visionary. So when I started looking at businesses and as a whole, just within my own position, I would look at things and I would say, that's not efficient. Why are we doing that? Those systems don't talk to each other. This is just creating work for us and it costs more for the business. Why aren't they coming up with a solution for this? It was always something that I was always thinking on the back end. And then I would take it upon myself, which was obviously out of my typical role, to start kind of creating things for these businesses. So I worked for a contractor at Wells Fargo and I created processes and procedures for an entire department that had instruction on how to do the role that we were doing. Needed for me, but it helped me and it helped my team. And then it ended up being something that another manager from a different state reached out to me to ask if he could use it to train his employees on. I was not even a trainer. I went to another company when I got into insurance and you sit and you shadow an employee typically. And day one, the employee is complaining about, oh my God, bro, we're using Excel for this and we're using this for that. I'm looking at the system. I'm like, a lot of the stuff that's in the system already in housing this. I was a week into the company and we started scheduling meetings to shift the whole processes of the system into the internal system and documentation. So it was just more transparent for the internal team. There was a lot more room for error on this side. So over time, I started realizing I'm like good at this. I'm good at seeing where things are not working and creating a plan and becoming efficient. So then I started doing it externally, just through contract work. I was hired in a company more on the sales side. And then I kind of went into the operational side and I led the operational team and I hired people to do certain projects. And I basically introduced a whole new CRM and implemented it into the system of theirs. I created an entire client flow from start to finish, including automations and emails and communication and hands off and everything like that, as well as things that were creating a lot of excessive communication between VPs and agents and just changing that with the internal system so that there wouldn't be this continuous communication. It would just be a seamless transparency where when something was updated on one end, it was shown on the other and everybody was up to date on the process of their clients. Over time, this was just something that I got really good at. And I said, you know what? It's time to do this for myself now. I can do this and I've been able to do it so far. And so that's where society came to play.
Oh, wow. And thank you for sharing with our audience because that is normally what happens in a lot of workplaces. It's the systems they set up. And sometimes a lot of people don't realize those systems are what hurts your retention statistics, what hurts your recruitment statistics, what
Absolutely.
ruins your work culture. And my background is in government, but it works the same way in government as well. Systems that you have in place is why employees don't stay. But that's amazing just to be able to create systems and see the problems because oftentimes we can't find or identify the specific problem that's literally causing the organization failure. So to be able to see those, that's amazing. And I just thank you for actually having the courage to step out and change the system because that literally is why a lot of organizations struggle.
They do. They do. And new businesses, they tend to think that's something that they have to deal with later down the line. New entrepreneurs, sometimes one person, sometimes you're a couple people and you're like communicate with each other. But when there isn't any structure and systems and you start growing and you have to scale and you've not implemented foundation that will allow you to scale without creating errors and starting to see gaps and then you start missing clients and things start happening like that because there isn't enough of a foundation to create a seamless ability of growth. Now, the other part to it is also the accountability on the business owner, because sometimes there are certain things that as a business owner, we want to maintain and control and not be able to delegate efficiently or things like that. And so it's a two-part system where the foundation of the business has to be great, but also the mentality and the mindset of the business owner also has to be a certain kind of way because that's how it'll allow you to not reach certain blocks in your business and be able to keep growing depending on whatever that goal is without those limitations affecting you.
And y'all, I hope y'all took notes out there. So if you are a person that's looking to scale your business, you have to create systems that literally will not discriminate. I put it like that because that's a lot of what in with organizations out here. They don't necessarily know that they're discriminating, but how you're
Mhm.
setting up the structure and the foundation and again, great highlight of the owner because that's normally where all these problems start, y'all.
It does. It does. Even down to getting people who are not good in your team and you keep giving them a chance can create, like you said, a bad toxic environment in the office space or in the business. And that could affect if clients come back. That could affect the quality of the employees that you hire. So you have to be able to self-reflect internally as a business owner, because I've said this before. Owning a business, being an entrepreneur is the best type of therapy that could exist because owning a business is holding up a mirror to you and constantly telling you what is wrong with you. If you have money blocks, it's going to come out. If you have people pleasing tendencies, it's going to come out in your sales strategy. If you have any types of insecurities, it's going to impede your ability to grow because you're worried about what people think and what people say and how if this looks cringe or if I should create content or whatever the case may be. So it is literally something that you have to really reflect on. It takes a lot of internal growth and mindset to then keep pushing and keep pushing, even when you don't see results right away, even when you don't have clients right away, even if you're not seeing that return, it takes time before you finally start being able to breathe and be able to see the fruits of your labor. And that's why it's a harder path to go through, but it is a more liberating path in my personal opinion.
Mine as well, because I've been in entrepreneurship for a couple of years now, and the freedom that you have while you're in entrepreneurship as well, and just going back to that mirror, I myself, I had to get over a lot of people pleasing and that
Mhm.
money block thing because I'm telling you, social media will have you out here thinking that you start a business today, by Friday, you're gonna be a millionaire. That's some may be. We've seen it, but the reality of it is ask those people how long it took them to make another million. That's what
Mhm.
you have to weigh when it comes to what's sustainable and what's just viral, in my opinion.
Sustainability. I love that you said that. And that was actually where I was going with it because I think a lot of parts of life and part of business interconnected, business and life in general, but you have to be the person that can sustain that type of business size, that type of potential problems and things that arise. You have to be able to sustain that type of growth for long periods of time. So I heavily believe that we're tested in life and we get a lot of pushback in our business, in our personal experiences, things like that, to see, can we keep going? Will we keep going, or are we going to quit? Right. And in business, you can't just decide, boom, I'm done. You can. Right. But if you have all these people depending on you, if you have a whole team of people depending on you, you have all these responsibilities, you're paying a bunch of employees, you have a bunch of clients depending on your services. And then you're just like, you know what? Actually, I'm done. Man, that would be a really difficult thing to do to a bunch of people. So it's, can you sustain, can you be that person that can still go even when things get difficult? And that's part of the life lessons that we have to go through at the beginning.
And again, this I can stay on this all day, but I know my audience is like, what we gonna talk about next? Because they're so used to me going on to the next question, but I just had to stay on this particular question and this particular topic for 1 minute because I think that's a huge highlight of why organizations like Amazon and your Starbucks and things like that's how they were able to last as long as they were because they put systems in place and they
Mhm.
built those systems based off of the owner and his vision, but at the same time made adjustments accordingly as the business grew that literally took
Absolutely.
them globally. So I just had to stay here for a minute, y'all. But
Mhm.
as a single mother, because that's hard for I'm a single parent myself, and being an entrepreneur, it can definitely be difficult for us. How has your approach to time, energy, and priorities evolved compared to when you first started the business?
So when I did start, I was married, but I was still the default parent. So I was the one who had to have a flexible schedule always. And that was another reason what actually really launched me into entrepreneurship, because of the fact that I needed to have flexibility in my schedule. I was a terrible corporate employee because they had a half day and this child is sick and my littlest one would get an ear infection almost on a monthly for 6 consecutive months. It was terrible. And so it's like constantly missing work, constantly having feeling like a bad employee because you have to also be a present parent. And the majority of that responsibility is on you. Right. So it took some time for me to realize that being in the day to day 9 to 5 type of thing was even more stressful for me to maintain because I've always valued, I always thought it's important for me to be a present parent. I would never sacrifice working excessively. And you hear it all the time. Oh, yeah, people are very successful financially, but they have no relationship with their children. They don't even know what's going on in their life. And then their kids fall off the wagon and they have no idea what happened. What happened? I have no idea. There's no way. He was fine. How was he fine? You were never there. So he had to find love somewhere else and then made bad choices and that kind of thing. So I still refuse to be in a, even with my own business, where I'm completely busy from the beginning of the day to the end of the day. Sometimes it happens, there's fluctuation in time, but not where it's a consistent thing that I'm not a present parent. So I had to figure out, okay, this me working a 9 to 5 was more stressful because not only it's like I have to drop them off early to some orderly daycare or before school program so I can get to my office or work in time, right? Then I have the full 8.5 or 9 hour day that you have, and then the commute back to picking them up and then coming home. You have a couple hours, if that, in the evening to make dinner, get homework, bedtime routine, and that's it. You have no actual time to spend with them, right? And that stressed me out more. So going into entrepreneurship, being able to have the flexibility, even if that meant sometimes I'm working in the weekend, sometimes I have to work at night after I put the kids to bed, was better for me to be able to, I can pick them up from school. I can go on a field trip with them and I just don't book clients for that day. I don't have to ask to miss work because my child is sick. And so then that just shifted my priorities on how I wanted to manage my business as a woman, as a parent, but also just as someone who's ambitious and has goals and wants to show her kids that you don't have to settle in life, and I'm going to show you exactly what that looks like.
Oh, how I identify with this myself, and I know a lot of my viewers do as well because my background is I quit a stressful job just because it was high demanding. So it was I was the only one, so I had to be there. But being a single parent and being that parent that every doctor, every school calls when they call and say come get your child because they're sick, you
Mm.
have to go. There is no I gotta work. I can't come right now. You have to leave. And that's why I ended up leaving my job because my baby, had a time where she was constantly getting strep throat. It seemed like she was getting it every single month. And sure enough, she ended up having to get her tonsils taken out. But
Mm.
mama would have never been able to know that if mama had still been working that job because that was the thing. I had to call people to even take her to the doctor because I couldn't take off. So
Oof.
that Miss, you just hit on, I wouldn't say a nerve, but that right there, it reminds me of why I started entrepreneurship. And that's exactly how I set up my business now, giving all of my guests that grace because I know some are mothers. Even if you're not a mother, I still give you that grace because we deserve it. You don't have to be me, and we all know that life sometimes. So we do. We if we want that grace ourselves, we have to give it to others. So thank you for sharing with our audience because a lot of my girls out there identify with what you just said.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think unfortunately, the world, and not in a negative way, but unfortunately, the working world is made for people who don't have children.
Reach.
Generally, even there's men that I know that have their kids full time and they're trying to balance their work. And so
Mhm.
it's not meant for people who have children and the flexibility that you need in order to be a present parent and a good employee. And the micromanaging aspect of on this time wise is excessive. And that has a huge impact in the next generation into society. So what's the next best thing? Switching out the way that you decide to make an income. And for me, I realized that I wanted to do something purposeful. I didn't want to do something that had no meaning or that I was building something for someone else. And so again, going back to the lessons that we teach our children, when I have conversations with my eldest, she's old enough to resonate and understand a lot of the topics, but I tell her, you know what, mom took a big risk. I made an investment on this, and this is intended to help me grow as a person. And it was scary, but I did it anyway. And that's that at the end of the day, that's my main goal. When I want to empower other women and empower other people who have insecurities or are coming into places in their life where they have to make decisions. One is difficult, one is brings them back to comfort, right? And how to allow them to be okay with being uncomfortable and doing it when you're scared and doing it anyway, because that's the best lesson, one, for growth for yourself personally, but especially if you're a parent, that's the best lesson you can give your children too, because
Abs-
they're going to be taking over this world at one point, and you want them to be fearless. I want them to feel fearless, where even if they feel fear, they still do it and they push forward and they know that because they did, that's an elevation in who they are.
And I heard one of the greatest quotes of all time, and I know it had been said a million times before, but I heard it in my Bible study group last week. Failure is not something that you tried. Failure is something that you were fearful of trying. So I just want to send that out to people who may be fearful of starting a business because you may not have the funds or you may not think you have the clients or the right product. Start it anyway because a lot of us out here, that's how we started. We started it scared. I started my
Hmm.
podcast scared. I'm not a person that likes to be on cameras and seen everywhere. I'm not that person, but when you're living in purpose. And
Hmm.
again, when you're a parent, mother or father, you want to teach your kids those values in life. And a lot of people say, "Well, you got to have money to take care of them." Yeah, you do. But if that's literally the only goal of teaching them money, what do you think is going to happen when they turn 18, 19 years old? You have to teach those values of
Uh,
knowing how to go out there and get it because even though you're going to get it and you put in their lives at 18, 19, they may end up like me, spoiled, thinking that you're supposed to still take care of them and have no identity or be fearful of trying things. I literally had to teach myself all of this stuff, y'all, because I came from a very background. My parents gave me everything. So I had to teach myself that stuff. So I'm just letting y'all know that if money is the goal, that's probably what you're going to end up with, a spoiled, rotten child who may be fearful of their own goals out there.
yeah, I agree. That it goes back to you were talking about doing it, taking the step forward even when you're afraid. And I like to think about it like when you're driving, right? Like you have a destination, you have a starting point, you have a destination where you're trying to get to. It doesn't matter if you're in the car. It doesn't matter if you turn on the GPS. It doesn't matter if you turn on the AC. It doesn't matter if you prepped everything for it. You will not know what that road even looks like until you press the gas and you go. And life is literally that. Entrepreneurship is literally that. You have an end goal, but you have no idea how that route is going to be. True. There's going to be deviations. There's going to be traffic. There's going to be road rage. There's going to be dead ends. And you got to back up. What are you going to just stop there and stay there for the rest of your life? And some people might. Some people are like, I'm done. Right.
Mhm.
And you never actually get to the ultimate goal. We have to just keep driving and we'll
Absolutely.
eventually get there.
Now, I want to talk about how you position yourself as a business solutions broker. What does that mean, and how do you help businesses and owners build their businesses?
But initially, especially if someone's newer in their business, it's more just kind of building more like an accountability setup, right? We want to make sure that you are staying on top of what you're doing. And we both know it. The entrepreneurship world is lonely. When you're running your own business at the beginning, it feels lonely because you have no one to bounce around what the heck you're doing, right? So being able to have a coach, being able to have a mentor who's been there already to guide you, keep you accountable, keep you pushing and building the foundation of the business
Mhm.
is key, right? And making sure your mind is pushing forward, right? Because we can get lazy. We all do. It's natural. But then it's almost like a personal trainer. You have a personal trainer. Now you got to show up. If you can't have a membership to the gym and go whenever you want and do the workouts however you want. But when you have a personal trainer, ooh, they push you, right? And that's the goal of that, right? That's the foundation of that. Now, when it comes to the structures, businesses like bigger businesses who might have already employees who have pretty much a good, maybe a decent setup. They're having a successful run with their business. They're making good revenue and stuff like that, but they're maybe reaching certain blocks or they're trying to continue to grow, or they know deep down there's some things they could do better.
Mhm.
That's where I come in to basically figure out and dissect or diagnose, if you will, what exactly is going on with the business. Where are their blocks? What are their systems doing? What kind of processes they have? What kind of people they have in place for certain duties? How the delegation is being done and who's taking accountability for all of that, right? Once we can get a good picture, once I can get a good picture of what overall is going on with the business, then I can provide solutions, whether it's new CRMs, new systems, even insurance, if you will, if that's necessary to attract the right team members to your business, keep you competitive in the market, or just structures in general.
And I like how you answered that question because it sounds like you're using a very individualized approach to each business that you work with. You're looking and assessing their businesses personally and then coming up with solutions for them. I actually love that because I think a lot of people that practice that same structured approach for every single businesses, that's why a lot of them end up failing because every business, even though it may be the same industry, it does not look the same, y'all. Like my podcast, there's a million podcasts out there that are interviewing women entrepreneurs, but we don't all do our structures the same way. So
Mm,
I'm happy you highlighted that. And I just love your approach, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we're all at different levels, right? And there's no one size fits all at all. Even if we have the same demographic of anything, there's no way because your life is so different from mine and the way you run your things is so different from the way I do it. So I understand with business, it's not possible to do the exact cookie cutter program, but overall it's meant to really be enlightening for the ones who need a lot of that initial growth internally. And it's meant to be very kind of like a zen after they've understood, they've implemented, or the new changes have been taken effect into the business because like everything's smooth sailing now. Like I could feel it. It really takes a big weight initially from the business owner on the business side.
Now, one of the biggest things that are being talked about right now, especially on social media, now that AI is being incorporated everywhere, is that we're authentic. From a business standpoint, how has staying true to yourself translated into tangible growth or revenue for the business?
So authenticity is like number one. It is number one. AI is helpful. And I think one of the things that we mentioned earlier was adaptability. You have to be able to adapt in business. You have to be able to adapt with what's going on in the world. Because if you don't, you stay behind, right? If people don't adapt in technology, the people before trying to do things on paper still versus using a computer or using programs, they're stuck. They're not going to be able to grow their business effectively. So, same thing with AI, it's inevitable. It's something that we can fight or we can leverage, right? But how do you leverage it? By also still keeping true to yourself, right? And the biggest thing is people still want to deal with people. I hate calling customer service and it's an AI system telling me to verbally express what I need. I hate talking to AI. I can't stand it, right? I like talking to people. So same thing. It's okay. I can leverage AI on the back end to make things easier functionality wise. But when it comes to service and clients and things like that, they need an actual person to deal with. So I think authenticity is huge. Being who you are, and you'll know when you feel like you're not being authentic because you feel misalignment in yourself. You feel misalignment in your business. You're like, oh, like I have to try so hard to make this work. I have to try so hard to get to my clients. Just be you. And I promise you, when you are, you will attract the clients that resonate with you. When you start trying to be somebody else, you're going to attract clients that become problematic because they don't even align with your business as a whole. And really, that's the problem sometimes with business owners is they're desperate for money, but not all money is good money, right? They're desperate for clients, but not all clients are good clients. So you want to be able to be as true to yourself, especially if you're creating content, sharing who you are and your thoughts, and that will automatically pull people that are essentially your target audience, your target people. And why wouldn't you want to have clients that you actually connect with? That's who you want anyway. So that's what's going to create a bigger growth and more solid foundation because you're going to have loyal clients who actually like you and you like them back.
And we could just use content creators for an example of what Miss LaSure just said. And I just think about all the content creators who started off in one niche, whether if it was dancing or food things or whatever,
Hmm.
and hearing they drawing in all these views, y'all. But now because they're trying to try something new or put out a product, the audience is completely taken back. So you definitely, like she said, you have to stay true to yourself. You have to go after what you truly want, and the customers or clients will come. Because when I originally started this podcast, I knew that I wanted to interview women entrepreneurs, small businesses who were just looking for that moment of exposure. And it's not about charging them $1 million to get that exposure. I wanted to give that opportunity to women because we already don't have enough opportunity as is. And sure enough, I had over 100 hits on that first post. I posted it again, got 200 hits. So
Hmm.
literally is of where you have to be yourself and remember why you started it and just stick to it. Don't switch up just because somebody may not be coming or you're not selling because eventually I'm telling you it's gonna come, y'all.
Yeah. It's funny you say that, specifically for content creators. At this point in business, we have to be content creators, right? It's just when people are looking you up as a business owner, they're checking to find out where you are on social media, Instagram, TikTok, wherever, right? They want to see who you are through there. And my favorite comment that I see when I'm looking at videos is, I love whatever is wrong with you. People love seeing the quirky side of you. They want to see people being weird. They want to see people being silly. They want to see people being however they naturally are because it makes them feel, oh, this person's real. They're not embarrassed. When they're like, just as an example, and it's a sidetrack, but it adds to the point. There's a girl that I watch who just says something, her opinion about something, and then she scoots back and then she jumps and makes a weird pose and a crazy face. And every single video is like that. And it is hilarious to me. I don't know why, but it is. And she is not afraid to look crazy. That's basically what it is. But it's funny. And she's authentic. And she said, I remember she posted a video saying, as soon as I started doing that, her video, she went from this many followers to thousands and thousands of followers because now she was actually being herself. And as cringe as other people would be like, oh my God, I can't believe I would never post something like that. Right. But that's actually what people want. We want the authenticity, and people can sniff out also when you're not.
And I'm happy she brought up that point because that is literally the key point when it comes to content creators. You start off one way and then you switch up on your audience. I can't tell you how many content creators I've seen start going off on their audience when you originally was making people happy, making people laugh. And now we switching over and you have to remember your audience. You have to remember why you started it. And I have a person as well, and she's a single mom as well, like myself, and she cooks. She
Mhm.
doesn't use any grease or oil, and she calls herself mother. And
Okay.
she's just a light in my life, and I love reading her comments because everybody's like, "I love whatever is wrong with you," and I do. I comes on with the messy hair, got a million things in her hand. She has this big
Yeah.
old pot, and she's just taking all these nice vegetables and fruits from her garden, clearly, and she's eating, like, potatoes raw without washing them off and frying fish without oil and,
Oh
it's just
my.
amazing, y'all.
Yeah.
It puts you at peace, honestly, to see content
Mm.
creators like out there like that because you identify with them. Literally what it is, you identify with them. When it comes to building your brand, what core messages or transformations are you most intentional about communicating to your audience?
So when it comes to building my brand, I think I like we were just going on of the authenticity aspect. I try to stay true, sharing like where I am in my journey or things that I'm discovering about myself in this process. Like we said, people struggle to say goodbye to an old self and starting entrepreneurship and growing in life. You have to say bye to your old self. So there's your journey where you have to a lot of things change. And in order for them to change, you also go through struggle in the process of that change. So one of the biggest things that I like to share in my content, my social medias, you'll see it, is that I share things that I'm discovering about myself in that moment. I share things that are breakthroughs or just points that help other people understand that's okay and that's normal and that they're not alone. And actually, I'm writing a book called Breaking Free for Me because of that, because I discovered in my own journey that I needed to break free from the limitations that I had of myself. I had to walk away from a marriage. Years, we were married for 8 years. That wasn't healthy, right? It just was not a healthy relationship. And I knew that if I stayed, the problems were always going to continue. And I was only going to repeat generational cycles in my children. They were going to repeat attracting somebody or accepting behaviors that are not okay in a relationship. That ends up becoming a mirror situation where, okay, where else in life have I accepted things that I do not deserve? Where else in life have I accepted or inherited belief systems from my parents, maybe from seeing them and their struggles in marriage or the financial limitations I lived in and the ideologies that I was given, right? Where else am I seeing this? So then my past couple of years have been a very intense self-reflective journey back to me. And so breaking free from everything that you are that is not you is only going to make you not only a better person, but it's also going to make you a better business owner.
Oh, wow. And thank you again, Miss LaShare, for sharing that because that was like really great advice because a lot of people, whether if you're divorced or if you're a parent, you do in entrepreneurship, it's a constant growth type of thing. And you die to your old self. It's not to hurt your feelings, it's just being honest.
Yeah.
So
Self-reflection.
now you talk about elevation being non-negotiable, which I love that. How do you operationalize that into your daily habits or your business?
Elevation is necessary. There's no if, ands, or but in life. Think about our childhood. We grow up going to school. We were from babies to high school, right? Kids have to hit different milestones to know that they're developing, right? They have to learn to crawl before they walk. They have to learn how to speak. They have to learn how to use a fork. They have to learn how to tie a shoe. They have to, all these things. They have to learn how to ride a bike. And we get into adulthood, we get out of school, and a lot of people forget that you need to keep learning in life. That learning doesn't stop just because school is over. That's actually where the real lessons actually become a thing, right? You go through your 20s experiencing life and you start making all these choices and things like that, and everything has consequences, right? Everything has good consequences or bad consequences. Whatever choice you make, it's going to have a ripple effect always, right? And I tell that to my daughter all the time. You are your age now. I can only instill what I teach you, but I cannot protect you with the decisions you make when I'm not around, right? And that's going to create your own consequences and
Mm,
it'll inevitably come out however it does. And so as adults And especially as business owners, but as adults in general, we should not forget that we have to continue to elevate. We have to look back. In school, we were graded on our work, right? There was somebody who would look at our what we would write out and would tell us if we did well or not. We don't have that anymore as an adult. So guess who has to be that? Yourself. You have to be your own teacher. You have to be your own corrector. And
Mm.
you have to look back at yourself and look at what you're choosing to do. And if you keep choosing that same type of person in your life, guess what? You stay stuck in this cycle of having these types of relationships in your life. Or if you keep making this same choice with your money, then you're going to keep having those issues of having bad credit or having too much debt or not having this kind of thing. Or if you keep making those choices with the food you eat, guess what? You're going to inevitably have health conditions and things like that. It's all our choice. It's all in our power. And a lot of people forget that our life is 1000% in our power. We are the authors of our life. And we have to learn to pick up that pen and decide what we're writing in it. What we
Absolutely.
write is what determines where we go.
And I love how you explain that to our audience because often when we start a business, like I said, we think we have to go 1,000 miles per hour. We got to know everything about this industry. We got to know all the right people. We got to know all the right content. We got to know how to get all the right loans and grants out there. But it's a process, and it's okay not to know everything in one day. But as you said, we are lifelong learners. It does not stop after high school. Even if you go to
Mhm.
college and get a million degrees, it doesn't stop then either. Because many professionals would tell you, I have to continue my education because the industry changes every single year. And that's literally how it is in whatever be industry you're in. Things change every single year, whether if it's policies in your industry, whether if it's how grants are set up in your industry, things change every single year. So I just love how you explain that of it being like a newborn baby growing up into an adult because it
Mhm.
literally is a process. So give yourself that grace, y'all.
And in addition to that, it's not even just the industry that you're learning, it's who you are, right? Every single day, you're becoming anew. You're going through a new experience. And if you're a parent, you have multiple kids, you can't parent multiple kids the same. They're all different, right? So then as we're going through life, we're learning new things. We're going through every experience brand new. So we're constantly experiencing changes, but are we elevating because of that? Right. And so it is important to reflect where you are, the choices that you're making. And that's going to have a huge impact in where your business grows and where your life goes.
And another great point forget the business right now. You got to be able to work on yourself too. And a lot of people feel like they don't have that time. They have to get it all done because we got to be a millionaire by Friday. And they just develop those mindsets. But that is probably the biggest thing that you have to work on in entrepreneurship is yourself because it's going to try you. It could be from not having clients. It could be from just having a bad sales month. It can be a person quitting on a deadline. It could be
Mhm.
anything, y'all. And you literally just have to keep growing and keep elevating yourself in those moments because it's gonna test you. I promise you that. It don't matter what industry you in, it's gonna test you.
A heavy believer that your personality creates your reality, right? And so who you are internally dictates what is happening externally. People tend to think that what is happening externally impacts you inside, but it's the other way around. So
Okay.
working on yourself internally is literally a foundation of you becoming a successful business owner. Your internal ideologies, your mindset, your limitations. If you're in victimhood all the time, for me, you will never find a solution because then you don't think anything is in your control, right? So if you don't, that's why the Prisma Society, the foundation of just starting an entrepreneur is the mindset and the mentality and the accountability as part of the program. Because if you're not in the right headspace, you're not going to make good choices for your business. You're not going to make good choices long term. You can make impulsive choices. You can make bad choices with the money of your business. You can make bad choices with the people you hire. You can make bad choices with the clients you choose. And that's not going to reach success. So until you work on yourself, that is 1000% priority. It's something that we have to make time for.
Now, speaking of money, let's talk about monetizing your work. How are you currently packaging your coaching? And what have you learned about pricing your value?
So, so pricing value, I'll answer that first. Pricing your value has to do with your own amount of time that you dedicated to developing your skill set, the time that you've dedicated into providing a top tier service, and also the time that you work efficiently with your clients, whatever that is, right? So, knowing your value is a huge dictator on the clients that you attract. As far as the packages go, so there's 3 tiers, and that's why you were asking like, "Oh, you have a customized." It is because there is 3 tiers. So the first part is the Prisma Society, which is the initial program for newer entrepreneurs. They're put on a 90-day, like, intensive type of program where we do accountability coaching, but they have access to modules and training for lifetime. So they never lose access to it. They're able to access it at all times. That one is at $1,700. What it does is it allows me to work one-on-one on a weekly basis, to keep you accountable. And ultimately, the goal is within 60 days, you have 6 weeks, the foundation of each aspect of your business solidified. So the first part is understanding, creating a business plan. What are your actual goals in your business? The next part is figuring out the structure. Who's involved in the business? Is it just you? Is there other people? What does that look like? What is the dynamic? Who's responsible? What are the responsibilities between you? The infrastructure of the business, operational. Are you using CRMs? Are you using, how are you tracking your clients? How are you charging? How are you, that kind of thing? The marketing, the sales strategy, and so on and so forth. So each week is focused on one part of the business. And since we're connecting every week, you have homework to do. And within that time frame, you should be able to successfully know who your target audience is, what's the best approach to marketing your clients, what your goals are for this year, what is the actual revenue. You have a plan, and clarity is necessary when it comes to business. If you do not have clarity on where you're going and where you're at, you're just winding down a road with no direction and no end goal. So we have to have a plan up front. So that's the foundation of part number one. Now, foundation, the second part program, that one is intended for businesses who have had some success, that they've been running it for a handful of years. They're maybe making somewhere between $100,000 to maybe 200, 250, and they're starting to reach places where, okay, we want to reach the next level of our business. We have some people on board, but there's maybe some delegation problems. Maybe the owner has too much on their plate. Maybe there's misalignment in who does what, and they can't scale efficiently because of that. So that's where some structures and additional things are put into place to figure out all the cracks. So because when business grows, the cracks are more visibly shown. So we want to make sure that all of that is cleaned up so that when it is growing, there is nothing falling in through the cracks. There is no cracks. And then the top tier, the partners, the Prisma partners, basically that program, I'm sorry, the second one is 3,700. And then the third program is 5,000 and above. It just depends on the business itself, because this could be somebody who they're making $500,000, they're making $1.2 million, but now there's bigger issues. There's disconnected systems. There's things that are creating inefficiencies. There's potential loss of clients because of these things. So now I'm more hands on. I'm in the business with them. I'm figuring out exactly what these is, and now I'm putting in the work physically to create these efficiencies as quickly as possible so that they can run their business smoothly and get back to work and be able to scale at a bigger capacity.
Oh, wow. And I love how you broke down the tiers for our audience because y'all, for $1,700 in 90 days, that is a great investment. She's literally setting you up to be an entrepreneur that builds sustainability. And for $1,700, that's amazing. And even going over to the $3,700 of because a lot of people, that word rebrand scares a lot of people. And but for some organizations, especially for a place like Starbucks, like I mentioned earlier, that rebrand is literally what took them global. I thank you for thinking of the way that you did because y'all, it's like a science to what Miss LaSure just did. But I can't tell you the formula because I don't know it myself just yet.
That's
So, but there's some science behind what Miss LaSure just said, y'all. And when I find it, I post y'all an article or statistics or whatever it is. But That is amazing how you were able to break down those tiers because you don't see a lot of people out here doing that. You see them just saying small business, medium-sized business, rich folks. And it really and when I say medium-sized businesses, it be, I can help you with your selling or I can just change your content creation for you. But maybe they just need a whole redirection or maybe, like I said, they're rebranding. So y'all, I'm telling you, Miss LaSure, she hitting on it, y'all. And for $1,700, 90 days, y'all, $1,700, 90 days, she setting you up, giving you the tips on how to be a sustainable entrepreneur, not a viral entrepreneur, a sustainable one that'll be here 20 years from now. And that's key. So for I want to give some advice for the women who may feel stuck or just stuck in their ways, basically. What are the most common mindset or behavior blocks? And what would you suggest to help them move through them efficiently?
So this is gonna be a reality check, okay? So I hopefully it doesn't come off aggressive, but a lot of times it's fear of failure is what I see, and ego. Those are the top 2. Ego in the sense of if they're unwilling to change, if they're unwilling to change and really reflect on taking accountability on your own limitations, then you won't be able to really be that successful because it's going to create a block constantly, right? Number 2, fear of failure is one of the biggest ones. People are afraid of the unknown. Stepping into something that you've never been in is scary. It still is. It never not does not become, but it's the saying that I love re-saying. I don't remember where I heard it. I think it was Alex Hermosi. Be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Stay comfortable with being uncomfortable. And in business, that's literally all you're experiencing. You're having to experience things for the first time and not knowing the answer to it. Being able to step forward and not knowing what actually is going to come of it. And so business is 1000% like that. You step into business, you've never done business before. You don't know what the outcome is. You want to know, but business is going to take you through many different directions and it's going to challenge you and it's going to trigger you. And it's meant to. It's meant to because that's how you're able to grow. And if you're allowing yourself to put ego aside and self-reflect and see, okay, what can I do better here? Where did I miss something there? How did I address this wrong? Right. And then you'll be able to then figure out what is causing that block. Right. So self-reflection and then doing with fear anyway. It's uncomfortable. It's no one says it's easy. That's why entrepreneurship is not the easy route ever, but it is the one that brings you to the most internal peace and freedom in the long run because you actually get to know who you are and you actually get to break barriers that you didn't think were possible. And especially if you come from a life like my upbringing, a lot of my family has never reached high levels of success. And by high levels of success in my world is they've never even made $100,000 a year or bought their own house or things like that. I don't come from a place of money at all. And so my ideologies are different from what I grew up with. And you will hear a lot, which I still get, why don't you just take the easier road? Why don't you, not the easier road, why don't you just do some things to cure? Why don't you just make sure you have a consistent income all the time? Why don't you, that's someone who's giving you advice out of their own limitational beliefs, but also their own out of love. Even though it's out of love, it's still against what you're going. So you're gonna experience some hate. You're gonna
Yeah.
experience some criticism. You're gonna experience a lot of lack of support. Usually the people that are closest to you sometimes are the ones that support you the least. And you have to be okay with that too.
And I love how you mentioned fear of failure. And I'm going to say it again, y'all. Failure is literally what you don't do. So if you go out there and you actually try, that's not failure, y'all. Not putting a product out and it not selling a million copies, that's not failure, y'all. That's you taking a chance on yourself and being courageous enough to step out there. And now what you do is if you didn't sell those million copies, that was your goal. It gives you the opportunity to come back, assess, and grow through the situation. But
Mhm.
failure is literally just never doing it.
It's a
So
lesson. Yeah, it's either a lesson or success.
There you go.
Failure does not exist unless you stop. And
Mm.
that's what you were saying.
Yep.
Unless you stop, it becomes failure.
There you
But
go.
if you experience a lesson, it's an experience, you figure out what you learned from there, and then you try again and you do it differently. And then that's a new experience. And then you try again and do it differently. And then eventually you keep doing that success.
And a lot of people want to know, how do people become experts? It's because they went through those motions and they weren't afraid of failure and learn from those mistakes that they made of actually trying. And that's what built them to that expert level. So if you guys wondering how you get to that expert level in entrepreneurship, that's how you do it. You got to be willing to go out there and try whatever your vision is, whatever that goal is, and learn from those mistakes. And if it's successful, that means what you were doing was right. So keep doing it until you need to possibly rebrand or just readjust to, because as I said, the world is constantly changing. So we all have to make shifts every now and then. Now, let's talk about the journey to self. It could be very emotional and, as you've been saying, uncomfortable. How do you balance inner work with the demands of running and scaling the business?
Inner work, as I said, is necessary, right? I take the time to meditate. I take the time to reflect. I take the time to slow down. And a lot of times in business, we tend to think that it's always go, right? It's just go. Just keep doing, just keep working, exhaust yourself, and you reach burnout by doing that. And so being able to slow down, which actually has been a difficult thing for me because I'm always trying to do that and the next thing and the next thing. And then on top of that, with being a parent, you never rest, you never stop, right? But there's times where you have to use your intuition. And a lot of people tend to not listen to their gut. Their gut is their inner voice. And sometimes their gut is forewarning them or telling them, you need to slow down. Sometimes your body is telling you that it's exhausting and you need to slow down. And if you are not at your best capacity, your business depends on you. So if you are not the best capacity, your business is going to fall, right? So you have to be able to slow down at times and take a moment of rest and take a moment to reflect and take a moment to meditate and really pay attention because we tend to stay distracted a lot. We have social media. We have so many things that are coming at us all the time. We have dopamine at our fingertips always, right? And so, as an entrepreneur, you have to learn to be able to take a pause sometimes from those things and take a time to breathe. And then and in those moments of silence is where you can actually be able to absorb the message that you need to hear. And that's when you can hear redirection. So I think personally, I've gotten into the habit of meditating or prayer, slowing down, listening, and really truly getting in tune with what my body is telling me. I think, especially as women, we tend to not listen to our gut because we don't learn to trust it. We don't learn or we're not taught to trust it, right? We're taught to think logically, right? Don't think with your emotions, think with your head. And the crazy thing is, scientifically, it's proven the other way around. Your gut is your forewarning and it's aware of things that you do not see, right? And it's that voice that comes to you and tells you, that's not a good person. But then in our mind, we're like, but everybody tells me he's great or and on paper, like what, I don't know. But then there's something internally telling you something's off and you ignore it and you silence it. And that voice doesn't stay strong. So as a woman, as a mom, as someone who had a gut feeling at the beginning of my marriage that said,
Yeah.
I didn't listen to it, right? And so then that puts you through lessons. And hopefully you learn them if you do go through them and you can reflect. But if you learn to be more intuitive and trust what your body is telling you, you will have a lot more success.
And I can give y'all a million definitions of what Miss LaSure just said. Trusting your gut, it can keep you out of a lot of situations that you already know for is going to happen. Now, you mentioned giving parts of yourself to become your higher self. How has that process directly impacted your leadership style or decision making as an entrepreneur?
So giving up parts of myself has definitely improved who I am as a person, as a leader. And if you improve as a person, you improve as a leader, right? There's certain aspects of you that you have to let go of. And it has a lot to do with just everything that you've learned in life that created potential insecurities, right? And when you have certain parts of you that limit your ability to fully flourish, then that's gonna affect your ability to lead. That's gonna affect your ability to run a successful business long term, right? Which again, it goes back to the idea of entrepreneurship being the most depth therapy session out there because you have to go through these reflection moments and you have to self-analyze and you have to see what is not serving you anymore. And sometimes that could be, like I said, ideologies. It could be people. It could be friendships that you think they've been in my life for so long. But then when you really reflect and you're like, man, but I don't really like the way the dynamic between the way that the disrespect between them and their spouse, or I don't like the way that she blah, 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 blah. Just different things, right? You're realizing these things that it just doesn't align with who you are. But you keep that friendship because you're like, but we've had history. And the biggest lesson that I've learned recently, it's the people that you want to keep in your life is not those that you share your past, but who you share your future with. And that means like where you're going in life. Where you're going in life, you want people around you who align to that direction. And same thing with your client base. You want people who align with your message and your service and resonate with that and where you're going. Because I can talk about trauma all day, but I don't want to bond about my trauma because that's the past and it's
Exactly.
non-existent anymore. And I can't grow if I'm stuck in the past.
There you
If
go.
all I think about is what happened to me and what that guy did to me or what my mom did to me or blah, 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 if you're stuck in that mentality, you will never move forward. And you will also never forgive. And that's like drinking poison and hoping that person gets it. Right.
Right.
So, in order for you to grow and develop, you have to let go of things that hurt you. You have to let go of people and you have to be okay with grieving that part because it's not easy. Losing a part of yourself is still like a sense of grief of loss, grief of death. Part of you is literally dying.
Yeah.
So it is a very uncomfortable place to be in. And so that's why to some people, growth is very difficult because they don't want to feel the feels. And no one does.
Right.
No one does. But it's almost if you think about labor, right? You know, at the end of all this pain, first off, you know it's going to be over eventually. You
Hmm.
can't be in labor forever. But at the end of it, you have this child and you have this sense of relief and it's over. But you have to go through it, right? You just have to. There's no other way. And when it comes to growth, you have to go through the emotions. You have to take the action. You have to say no. But at the other side, there's a door that opens and it's a beautiful door. And you just have to walk through it.
And I love how she explained that because honestly, you have to start thinking that I had the power to change my own life because I'm here to tell you, if you waiting on somebody to come change your life, you're gonna be waiting forever. So you have to check in with yourself. Those moments are where you're mad at people not supporting you, whether they're family or friends. Think back. Where does that come from? You really have to go through it. I love talking about healing, and social media has it glamorized at this point of what healing actually really looked like. But it's those ugly moments of looking at yourself and taking accountability, which is another word society hates. You have to take accountability for your own actions, what you allow in your own life. And that's how you grow into your future, honestly.
That
Literally.
part, that part. And I like that you said that it's the taking accountability for what you allowed, right? Because sometimes we think this person did this person did that. Okay, after a certain period of time, why did you still stick around? Why did you stay there? No one forced you to, right? And for a while, that's where that victimhood comes in and you don't realize it. You don't realize it until after the fact when you truly reflect. And it's this person did this to me, this person did that to me, and that person did that to me, and that like all these things. But it's are you continuing that relationship? Have you set up boundaries for yourself to protect you? Right. And are you withholding them? Because you could communicate them and then they don't respect it, but then you allow it to keep coming back. Right. So those boundaries are intended for your own protection, your internal peace. And I'm a heavy believer on, again, who you are internally is what you attract, right? So then it's going back to why did I even attract this person in the first place? Why did I even allow this person in the first place? And I learned that when I learned that heavily about myself, I was like, whoa, it's a very powerful moment to realize maybe you had codependency. Maybe I will tell you I'm going to be totally raw about my past. I was in this relationship and my parents' problems, divorces, just a lot of chaos growing up. And so I learned about myself that I sought to resolve problems as a validation of who I was, which I'm great at it now. I'm great at solving lots of problems, but solving people. And so then you then automatically attract projects, people you can help become better. And then when it hits you, it was your internal energy because vibrations, like we're all energy, right? So vibrations, certain levels of vibration only attract something else that is exactly same vibration. So if you're vibrating low in guilt, shame, fear, anger, resentment, jealousy, you're going to attract somebody else who's compatible in that energy as well. And when you finally realize that's not it and you start vibrating higher, then that's where that disconnect starts happening, right? Sometimes what happens, especially when I'm talking about relationships, one person starts trying to elevate and the other person does not. And that's where friction starts happening. It becomes like, oh, you're nagging, you're expecting too much, you're asking for too much, you're this and that, but it's not really that. It's that now there's misalignment.
There you go.
And then you're trying to make this misalignment work, but it doesn't work because you're in two different places. And that's where you have to make a choice. Either you have to come back down and then continue in that same vibrational energy, or you stay going up and you have to disconnect.
And what me and Miss LaShore is telling y'all right now is how you get to what we're about to talk about right now. Everybody wants to manifest the perfect life, but there's a process, y'all. Now, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. How do you personally integrate manifestation with strategy and execution in your business?
I love that. So, manifestation, I love this topic so much because it has a lot to do. That's a great segue.
Yeah.
It has to do with it's all internal work. It's all internal work. This is why the foundation of starting your business starts with building you first. That's the foundation first. And part of manifesting has a lot to do with your belief system and who you are internally and what you attract. You can only manifest at the level of the vibration that you're in, right? And going back to those tiers of if you're low vibrational, you can only manifest at that same frequency. So you have to learn to level up. And the only way to do that is with gratitude. But one thing that I learned, I don't know, Dr. Joe Dispenza, I'm obsessed with his books, I'm obsessed with his teachings. Dr. Joe Dispenza teaches how you can be grateful for things you have yet to receive because you have to become the person first before you attract what you're trying to attract. You have to live in the future as if it's already here in order for you to receive. Because the way the universe works, the way the world works is it validates your reality. Because at the end of the day, our worlds, your world, my world, their world, your audience's world, all of our worlds are based off of our perception, how we think, how we feel. We have this filter on. You and I could be at the same coffee shop. I could be having a shitty day. You could be having an amazing day. And your perception of the coffee shop is going to be entirely different than mine, even if we ordered the same coffee, even if we were there at the same time, even if we dealt with the same customer service person, right? The same cashier or something. It'll be an entirely different experience simply because our perception, our filter of life dictates how we see it, right? And so if we live in this mindset of it's hard to earn money, guess what? The universe is going to show you how it's hard to earn money, right? If you live in an energy of, I'm just broke all the time. I just, every time I try something, it always goes wrong. Guess what? The universe is going to further validate this. I use this example of when you go to the car dealership. It's a very simple example, but it resonates with everybody. You go to the car dealership, you look for a car, you like the red Corvette. And then you don't drive off with the red Corvette. But now all of a sudden, when you leave that dealership, red Corvettes everywhere. All of a sudden, they're in your radar. They weren't there before, but now they're everywhere. You didn't even know that many people owned red Corvettes in your neighborhood, right? So, same thing. That's such a simple example of all of a sudden you start seeing those things. So, when you start living in gratitude and you start seeing the positive, and I am successful, I am $1 million. I'm a very successful business owner. I'm a very successful Dada. I'm a very loving this. You start internalizing, but not just mentally, but feeling it because your mind and your heart have to connect for this to work. That's how you truly manifest. If you can internalize the thought, which is why the meditation is important, you have to visualize your life as if it was already here. And you have to live life and walk down the street when you walk into the coffee shop like you are already that. And then once your internal energy has accepted it as truth, because our mind only accepts what it believes. Our mind only accepts what it believes. And so if you believe you don't remember people's names, constantly, I don't remember people's names. Guess what? You're never going to remember people's names. When you believe that you are already at, the opportunities are going to come up. The people who need your services are going to show up. Money opportunities are going to show up. People are going to treat you different because your aura is now different. And so that's how you manifest. When you internalize who you're trying to be, you become that now. You act in it now, even if everything is falling apart behind you. You have it together because you are that. You are the shit. You're there. You already been there. And then
Awesome.
everything will reflect externally later.
So, y'all, if you ever wanted to know how to manifest, Miss LaSure just told you. Everything starts internally. Oh my God.
Internally.
But it I'm telling you, it takes that moment of reflection. And a lot of people, as we've talked about throughout today's episode, are fearful of that. And they literally go years and decades of their lives wondering why things are failing around them. And it's because you won't take a look in that mirror. Once you take a look and actually look and accept, because that's another key, accept what has happened, accept the moment, acknowledge the moment. And if you have to make changes, if you have to release people, but do what you got to do in order to get that vision out there, y'all. So that's manifestation right there. The head and the heart, they got to match, y'all. You can't say in your head, I'm finna make $1 million, and in your heart, you're saying, ain't nobody gonna support me. It's not gonna work, not
Mm.
gonna work, y'all. I'm telling you, it's just not gonna work. So when everybody say change that mindset, it's not to be mean, it's not to hurt your feelings. It's literally how you get to success. So thank you again,
Right.
Miss LaSure, for telling our audience because this has been an amazing conversation with you today. And sadly, we've come to the end of it. And we always leave with a legacy. And I give you a couple of minutes to think about this. When we think back to your work years from now, how do you want to be remembered?
I want to be remembered as someone who empowered people to get out of their own way and become who they were always meant to be. I want to leave that behind for my children. I want to leave that into the world because not enough people are rooting for you and people feel like they're not heard and their voice is silenced. And I want to give people the opportunity to know that their voice is important and their feelings are important and that every single person has this beauty in them that has to be released. And sometimes we're too afraid to release it. And so being able to get to a place where you can feel this immense amount of self love, it starts off with that and being able to have this love for yourself and just being a little piece of somebody's journey to get them to that place. That's what
Oh,
I want to be known for.
I love that. And sadly, you guys, we've come to the end of today's episode. But before we go, we're going to make sure we get all of Miss LaSure's information. Let us know how we can sign up for your services again. Remember, y'all can get 90 days of business sustainability for $1,700. So I'm gonna let her tell y'all how you can sign up. Go ahead, Miss LaSure.
So you can find me in a couple social medias and you can also go directly to my website. So my website is laprismasociety.com. You can go in there and scroll to the bottom, put your information in, and I'll get back in touch with you. You can also send me direct messages on my social media. My Instagram is sarai.sarai.az and my TikTok is sarai.the.specialist. And either one you can find me and I'd be happy to help.
And I will be leaving all that information down in the description box below. Any last words before we adjourn today's meeting?
Nothing. I'm just grateful that I was here and I really enjoyed our conversation today. So thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
And with that, ladies, today's meeting is now adjourned. Thanks again to Miss LaSure, La Prisma Society, for coming on and sharing all her insights. And you be sure to subscribe to About Her Business so you never miss whenever we upload. Also, make sure you get your About Your Business virtual summit ticket. Tickets are now on sale on Eventbrite. Until we meet next time, keep those goals tight, those circles tighter, and those bank accounts growing.